Hey, Courtney. Okay, so my first question for you is what were you struggling with before working together originally, and how did it make you feel? Some things that might jog your memory just from you and I talking over the months when you first started with me is you actually surprised me when you told me that you were kind of contemplating even just kind of like not sticking with the business. You told me kind of after we had already started working together that you were thinking about quitting the business. And I couldn't tell that. It's not like you had a bad attitude when we started working together. You seemed really happy, but you're also just a very pleasant person. So when you told me that, I was very surprised. And I know it's just because you've been working very hard and you were very consistent with your content at the time. And you had that very intricate process that you had learned from your coach prior to working with me. And so it was frustrating that, you weren't generating the leads that aligned with the amount of effort that you were making with your content. So I'd love if you can put yourself back in your shoes of a year ago, if you can recall your struggles back then and how it made you feel.
Okay, so about a year ago, when I hired you, I think it was the end of February, I was at a point in my business where I had been running my business for a little bit less than a year. I officially launched in May of 2023, and it took a few months to generate some clients. And I had some clients, and I learned marketing from a previous coach. And it was effective at the time. It was what I needed. But the problem that I had with it was that the content creation process was so time consuming because I didn't have any strategy. So I was spending hours and hours and hours every weekend batching out a bunch of social media posts that were very, looking back now, they were very surface level. They were not getting me the kind of leads that were ready to buy. I didn't have the kind of content that was making my leads really understand what I did. So yes, I was basically at a point where I was burnt out of my business because it wasn't fun. I didn't have enough client work that was keeping me satisfied with the kind of work that I wanted to do. I felt like I was just spending all of my time doing content and I really hated doing it. And it got to a point where I felt like it wasn't worth it anymore. I started my business to have fun with it, to just have something where it was fulfilling and I could help people, and I wasn't getting to the point where there was enough of my time that was dedicated to doing, my calling, my work for people, and it was just taken over by trying to get clients. So that was the point that I was at when I hired you. I was very intrigued by what you were teaching about in your content about having adaptability and having a strategy, and I felt like I was missing that piece where I felt like there had to be a better way. Like I knew I was not doing things efficiently, that I was wasting a lot of time creating my content, and that the content wasn't good enough. But I was also scared to make that investment, that jump, because I didn't know if I was ready to make the changes necessary. Even though I knew that there were things that I could be doing better, I didn't know if I was ready to do it. I kind of wanted to stay in my zone of like my comfort zone, which what I was doing at the time, even though I hated it, it was my comfort zone because it's what I was used to, and I didn't want to change because change is hard, even though I knew I needed to change, and I needed to do things differently. So it wasn't until I started talking with you, because you piqued my interest initially, and I was following along with your content, and I realized that you knew what you were doing, and then I joined your lead overflow workshop. And so then I really knew that you knew what you were doing and that you could help me, but I was still afraid to take that leap. But I'm so glad that I did. So that's kind of where I started at.
My second question for you is what was your experience like working with me in the Content Clarity Scan service? and even now continuing on with me in the content check-in service. You can share things like what you felt like when you first worked with me in the content clarity scan, like when we had the initial sprint, which would be the initial call that we had after I did the audit, how you felt when you received the audit. I know that the audit was something that you were initially nervous about, if you can remember, because you were very honest with me before working with me about how you typically feel about getting, feedback and critiques. And hopefully you recall, hopefully how I made you feel comfortable with that. I respected that, and I was very considerate about how I provided you with feedback, but also still very honest with you. If you remember how you felt during our call and subsequently during your initial support weeks, you had 2 weeks for support. And then what made you consider staying on with me in the content check-in service? I'd love to know that, because I don't actually know what made you continue on with me, because you were actually my first Content Clarity Scan client. So trusting to work with me is something that I would love to hear what made you want to do that, especially because I believe you came from my... I think you came from my Lead Overflow workshop. So I'd love to hear just kind of like that whole process and experience of working with me over now a year. Like, have I been consistent? Have you liked working with me? How has it been sharing things with me? And have you been comfortable getting, feedback and getting support? All the things.
So the short answer is you have always just gone above and beyond with every service that you've done, whether the Content Clarity Scan or the check-in service. You always deliver infinitely more value than the investment is worth. So going into the audit, you're right. I was very nervous about that part because I hate criticism. And this is the kind of thing where I knew that there were things that I was doing wrong or that I wasn't doing well. And I just did not want anyone to criticize me about it. It's one of those things where it's you just didn't want that extra, affirmation about the things you suck at. But you were very kind. I'll never forget when you showed me a Loom video of my website. On your screen, your big, huge screen, my head was cut off in my main picture on my home page. And you didn't even point that out. I was mortified. You were very objective with your feedback. It never went into criticism territory. You were always very objective, and you told me not just what was, not as good. You told me how to improve it, which is exactly what I was looking for. I don't want someone to just go through all of my stuff and say, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. I want someone to be oh, change this to this, or, use these very straightforward improvements. And that's what you did. And I really appreciated that, because that actually saves me time. Instead of just telling me you need to change everything, right? You told me exactly what to focus on, and you did a really good job of listing out the priorities, because as I mentioned at the time, I wasn't looking for a laundry list of things to do because I was already overwhelmed with the content. And you didn't give me, you gave me a list because I asked you to give me the full list, but you told me these 3 things, right? These are the 3 things to prioritize. These are going to make the biggest impact. And that was really helpful for me, because instead of getting overwhelmed with everything, I could look at those 3 things and be yes, I need to focus on these. And that's what I did, right? I went and I redid my whole website, and it was overwhelming, but that's just because of who I am. I just, I do everything 100%. And I knew I needed to do it anyways. So you really, motivated me to do it. And that was one of the best things that I could have done for my business. I improved all the copy, all the colors. There were just so many things that you gave me the push to do. And it was because you approached it so well that I was open to it. If you had approached it in a more negative light, I don't think I would have gone through the effort to do it, because I would have felt instantly demotivated. And I would have felt bad. So I'm really glad and grateful for you and how you did it, and how you approached it. That helped me a lot. And then honestly, just going through the whole service, like you've been just amazing. You really listen to my feedback. You let me send you a million voice notes all the time, which, I'm not a typer. I really like to get my thoughts out through just talking things out with you. And you did that with me throughout the whole experience. And it was just huge. It was huge for me. This whole service really opened my eyes up to what running a business can be like. And I didn't think it was possible to enjoy doing content, but I actually started enjoying doing content after working with you, because you gave me not just a strategy, but you gave it to me in a way that made sense to my brain and made sense to, where I didn't have to use as much creative energy. I could just follow a process. And I'm a process person. I do operations, I do systems. I needed systems, and you could understand and talk to me in the language that I could understand and work with. And content is a very hard concept for me to wrap my brain around because it is so creative. And I'm not a creative person. And so you help break it down in a way that takes all of that out and allows me to just follow the process. And that, proceduralizing all of those steps really helped me. And you were really kind and patient when I had questions. Everything that you did was just above and beyond. And I'm very grateful to you for doing that for me. And then, going into the check-in service, to me, it was just a no-brainer. I don't know. I just feel like anyone who would go through the Content Clarity Scan, it's a no-brainer. You're investing all of this money. I say that it's not that much money, but you're making an investment in your content strategy. Don't you want to know if it's working over time, right? That's the whole point of the strategy, is to support you over time. So I needed you to see if it was working. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was working. I was getting leads and it felt great, but I didn't know, I don't know. I think initially the content strategy that you gave me was definitely for the period of my life where I wanted to invest energy into my content. And I did. I had a lot of time I was spending on my content, but it wasn't unsustainable because I was enjoying it. And that was the main difference for me, is I hated doing content before, and then I started liking doing content, but it was still taking a lot of time because I had the time, but then I started getting busy. And then that was when I had the check-in with you, that first check-in. I was like, this is taking too much time. I'm doing too much content. We need to scale back. And so we scaled back. You helped me, and you focused. You were the one who told me which hooks were working, and you helped me work on my hooks because I didn't really know how to do my hooks very well. So you helped me with that. And then also just having you on Slack to be able to ask you about my hooks, or just something, some kind of phrasing where I wasn't sure how to phrase something the right way, and you would point me in the right direction. You'd tell me why it was better to word it a different way. That was huge. I need to be able to understand why things are better, from a marketing standpoint and from a psychology standpoint, in order for me to improve. And you help provide that feedback, which is really important. And so, having the Slack discourse, and then also having you look at my results and looking at my analytics to point out which ones were performing well, and then also having you adjust my strategy according to my bandwidth, because I started getting busier and busier. So I couldn't keep doing the same strategy that you gave me initially. Strategy has to be adaptive. It has to adapt to the season that I'm at. And so far, the pattern has been, the more time passes, the more busier I'm getting, not just because I'm spending, more time in my business and growing my business, but the efforts that I set out initially with your content strategy, the SEO, is now working for me. So I'm getting leads from the videos that I put out initially, right? And so that all of that is just kind of building up over time. And so it makes sense from a strategy perspective to adapt the strategy over time. And the only way I could do that is, through your help. You're helping me understand, and I could try to do it myself, but I knew that I wanted you to do it. You would save me the most amount of time. You would give me the best results. So the check-in service just, is a no-brainer. So I'm going to keep sticking with it because, marketing is one of the most, if not the most important area of a business. And with your help, like that's no longer a pain point for me. So like that feels great because that was my biggest pain point a year ago, and now it's not.
And the final question is, what are some of the results you've gotten from and as a result of working with me and since working with me? I know that you've gotten a lot of results, but I'd love for you to share them in phases, because initially you had your early results where we weren't sure if this was just kind of a fluke. And I would love for you to share some of those earlier results, especially when you did some of the changes and made the changes just from the audit, like the changes and updates to your website that we were really proud of, the updates with your keywords, the changes in the messaging with your offers on your service page. When you got like some of your earlier like speaking things that happened, and then your like 90-day results, and then when you were booked for like those 6 months. I would love for you to share very honestly that you were burnt out, because I was very proud of that. Not proud that you were burnt out, but proud that you were booked and that you felt comfortable to share that you were burnt out so that we could work on a different strategy, because I've been very vocal about you sharing that, and myself also kind of getting burnt out from the same type of momentum is what inspired me to also think about how clients and service providers specifically need diversity and in their content and marketing strategies that cover them in those periods where inevitably we're going to need things and strategies to cover us for lower energy, lower capacity times. And I was excited to respect and honor that you needed that, and what that looked like for you to still have clients and leads coming in and during those times where it was slower, but you enjoyed the slowness, and then to watch it pick right back up and you to continue to see leads coming in. Share things like where the leads were coming in from and how YouTube is a driver, and that was something new that we started together, and how Instagram now works for you, because that's something that you were using. I don't know if LinkedIn brings you leads. I know you were already using it before, but is it bringing you leads and clients now? If people are still coming from Google and search now. So share like those types of things. And any other wins, like share the wins about you actually liking marketing. I know you didn't really like doing the content and stuff. Any of those types of things, share those wins, both the emotional and actual cool wins that you're comfortable with sharing.
I know I've already kind of shared a bit about some of the wins that I did experience, but I'll just be a little bit more specific. So initially, we did change my website, and I redid pretty much everything, like the design, the copy, the messaging, and you helped so much with that, especially the messaging and the SEO. And instantly I saw a difference, because I think before the people who were going on my website were just leaving. But now the people who go to my website, more often than not, they end up booking a call with me. I think I'm at a point now where a lot of my leads either find me through YouTube, or sometimes I'll engage on Threads, and they'll see me on Threads and they will go through some of my content that's already on my account, like my Threads or my Instagram, and then they go to my website, and my website is what keeps them in, right? It's the whole funnel where they notice me, I get visibility on social media, and then my website does the sales part, right? Like that's what kind of hooks them in, and they see that I can help them. And I didn't have that piece before. Like that's a really essential piece. Like having the website is such an important piece of a business. Like it's so important to invest in that early on. And I'm really glad I invested the time to redo that, and I invested a lot of time. I learned, I didn't hire a copywriter, but I learned how to do copy. I did you recommended doing like the story brand, and I read that book, and I did work with a designer she did more of like consulting, but she helped me redesign my website to kind of follow that story brand framework, and that made a huge difference. Like my copy is so much more straightforward. Whereas before I had paragraphs and paragraphs of text, and I realized that no one was reading it because no one has time to read blocks of text on a website. And, there is such a thing as being too long-winded on, sales pages and stuff. And so I learned how to keep things kind of succinct. And that made a huge difference because now people were actually reading the content on my website, and I was able to showcase. I did a case study on my website, so I had that to showcase. I just have a lot going for me now with those changes that you helped me through. And it was so nice to have you kind of in my corner. Like every time I had a question about anything that I was doing, you could help guide me in the right direction. And so I do get a lot of leads from occasionally YouTube, I would say mostly Threads, either from seeing me engage on stuff, or referrals, like other people referring me on Threads, or like Instagram. Like I'm not as active lately because we have adapted my strategy kind of down as I got busier and busier. But occasionally people will binge my content on Instagram, and I can tell because they're scheduling through my old schedulers, which the only place I have is like through my really old Instagram stories. So that's how I know that they're going through them. And so like at this point I have this whole database, I feel like, or this content bank on my content or on my social media accounts already that people can now go through, that I've already done the work, through my strategy to have, and now it's there. And now I just need, just a little bit for people, a few leads to come in, because I'm at a very sustainable place in my business now where, I'm not needing leads. I still get occasionally like, 2 or 3 leads a month, and they usually sign up to work with me. And that's really all I need right now, because I still have a lot of like past clients that are reaching out for me, wanting more work done. And I work very part-time in my business. I watch my daughter most of the time, but then I do work on my business about, maybe 11 to 12 hours a week. So not very much time. And I feel like we have adapted my content strategy for that, because initially I was working, weekends and nights and just constantly, and I was getting burnt out because I had that really busy season in the summer. We implemented my strategy around April, and then I got really, really busy in the summer, and I was booked out for, I think, 7 or 8 months straight, from like May all the way to like, I think, October or something. So I did have a slow period during the holidays because I feel like a lot of people were kind of slowing down. They weren't really getting automations done. And I had a lot of financial like advisors for my clients, and that was actually like the busiest time of the year for them. So they were just too preoccupied with that to, want automations done. So, that was actually pretty nice for me to have a break, because I had been booked out for so many months and I hadn't had that before, right? Like that was new and I wasn't really used to it. And on the one hand, yes, it was nice, but I was also working a lot. Like I was still working like weekends and nights, and it didn't, like, I knew it got to a point where I didn't really want that anymore. My life had just kind of changed. I wanted to spend more time with my family. I wanted my weekends back, which I hadn't had my weekends. I hadn't had like weekends free to myself for a long time, like since my daughter was born, because I've just been so like just go with my business. And those weekends were so important because my husband could watch my daughter all day while I could just get stuff done. But I noticed after time that was really, like, that was starting to put a strain on our family, because he was by himself. Like, he knew that he couldn't even, like, talk to me because I was, like, doing either content or, like, a client project, and it was just getting too much. And I had this point in the fall where I was like, I want to be able to enjoy my life. I want to actually just have my business be, not everything, right? Not the center of my universe. I want my daughter to be the center of my universe. I want to be with my family. And I was able to achieve that over the holidays. And then more recently, these last couple of months, yes, it got busy again in the second week of January for some reason. Everyone wanted automations for some reason, but I've been able to keep it at a pace where I can still have my free time, which is very important to me now. And because of that, I haven't been doing as much marketing for, of course, the reason for time. I don't want to spend more time doing it. And also, I don't really want more leads right now. I am at a good point where things are sustainable. So those are all my wins, like it's been, ups and downs, mostly ups, which is great. And this is all just kind of part of having a business, I feel like. And this is, my almost 2 years in my business, since I officially launched in May of 2023. And it's, something that I now can see myself doing for the rest of my life. Like maybe not the rest of my life, but, for quite a long time. Whereas before I felt like I was just ready to just give it up because I couldn't see myself doing so much content in that way. It just didn't, I would just dread doing it, and I would dread the thought of doing it for like long term. But now with your strategy, I can see myself in the future doing this long term. It's sustainable. I can see my business actually lasting. So I think that honestly is the biggest win of all.